One day, as I have, thou shalt regret the choice thou makest now. For the power thou seekest cometh not without a price. These words from the Dark Queen echoed relentlessly in Malgent's mind. Despite the entirety of their conversation, it was this warning that clung to his thoughts as he ascended through the vast network of the world beneath. What did she truly mean, he wondered. Though he could have questioned her further, Malgent prided himself on showing no fear, and believed he harboured no regrets for his actions. Yet Silkara's words lingered. As Malgent traversed the vast cavern network, his thoughts drifted to the deal he had made with Silkara. She had provided him with the attestation, a gem of undeniable power, assuring that it would grant him admission into the tribulation through the spectral ambassador of the late dragon matriarch. Yet, despite the significance of this gift, Silkara had made no further mention of the black spool, an omission that gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. A creeping doubt began to weave its way through his thoughts. He clearly suspected that the Dark Queen was concealing the true breadth of her intentions. But what was the secret, hidden within her silence? These uncertainties gnawed at him. Their agreement had been simple. Once he attained the power he sought, he would return to deliver the black spool to her. But a nagging thought persisted. Once he possessed that power, he would have little reason to fulfill his end of the bargain. He could choose not to risk the consequences of setting her free. The lack of transparency in their deal made Malgent wary. While he couldn't quite pinpoint the source of his unease, the sense that something crucial was being kept from him shadowed his path with doubt. He resolved to remain vigilant, knowing that the answers he sought would reveal themselves in time. Time had passed since his audience with the Dark Queen, the equivalent of 3 days on the surface. As he sloped upward through the cavernous passage, the terrain's embrace began to give way to the openness of the surface world. The path distinguished itself with subtle glyphs at intersections, guiding him upward, away from the acoustic sounds of underground water and shifting stone, which gradually faded into the distant. The tunnel narrowed as it ascended, its walls adorned with intricate reliefs, depicting surface landscapes and lanterns of the firmament. To Malgent, who had known only the shadowed depths, these images seemed almost mythical, a glimpse into a world beyond his own. The carvings grew more weathered the higher he travelled, as if fewer hands had touched them over the centuries, each step bringing him closer to a realm he had never known. His mind wandered back to Silkara's revelations about the Magus tribulation, now known as the Mage Trial, a contest shrouded in both mystery and peril, designed to test the worthiness of those who dared to seek the mantle of the Dragon Mage. The battleground was boundless, a limitless expanse where the laws of nature yielded to the arcane. Here the contenders wandered, seeking out their rivals in a dance of fate and destiny. As Malgent climbed, the smooth work of the stone walls transitioned into rugged rock formations, with veins of minerals shimmering subtly, some like hidden gems. His ascent brought a noticeable change in temperature. The once oppressive heat from the lava plumes below had long dissipated, giving way to cooler, more invigorating air. This new atmosphere brushed against his skin, carrying hints of moisture that gradually intensified. With every breath, the air felt lighter and more expansive, filling his lungs with a sense of ease. The weight that had long burdened him seemed to lift, allowing him to stand a little taller and move more freely. As he continued his ascent, a faint, loamy aroma mingled with a crisp freshness. This scent, rich and grounding, whispered of the world above. The passage occasionally widened into small chambers where stalactites reached down from above, their tips glistening with moisture that collected and dripped with rhythmic persistence, measuring time in a world without day nor seasons. Small streams originated from these droplets, forming channels that flowed downward, returning to the depths from whence he had come. Approaching the surface, the passage grew steeper, transitioning into moss-covered steps carved by unknown hands ages ago. The walls here were slick with condensation, and the air grew noticeably lighter, carrying unfamiliar scents. As the final stretch of Malgent's ascent followed a natural fissure in the bedrock, the blue-green glow of the fungi gradually mingled with another light source, one more diffuse and shifting. The passage neared its end, and he felt the anticipation of stepping into a world he had only glimpsed in the carvings. Finally, the tunnel mouth appeared as a jagged opening framed by weathered stones arranged in a rough semicircle. These ancient markers bore faded carvings of strange symbols and forgotten runes, pulsing with a faint luminescence in the darkness. Malgent was immediately struck by a cacophony of unfamiliar noises. Unlike the echoing caverns and distant murmur of underground water, the surface world was alive, with the gentle rustle of leaves, rhythmic chirps pulsing in the air, and distant haunting calls echoing through the trees. A soft "hoo, hoo" drifted from above, adding to the symphony of the night. He imagined that the surface world must always be like this, a vast illuminated sky stretching higher than the grandest of caverns he had ever known. A brilliant orb dominated the night sky, its beaming glow spilling across the wooded terrain, shining brightly through every open hole in the forest canopy. Though the underworld's lava had illuminated much of the world below, this celestial light was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Its silvery radiance was alien and overwhelming. His shadow vision struggled with this unexpected brilliance. Though not oblivious to the concepts of day and night on the surface, Malgent found himself disoriented. Such a radiant light seemed to him like the sun he had heard of, the brightest object in the world above. As his eyes gradually acclimated to this perceived brightness of the surface, Malgent realized he was not where he had expected to be. Instead of emerging directly into the labyrinth pass, he found himself amidst a wooded area, surrounded by towering forms. These structures, reminiscent of underground wooden vines, reached skyward, with their thick and rigid bodies branching off at the top. Instead of clinging to cavern walls, they attached to the sky, their verdant extensions forming an intertwined canopy that resembled a natural cathedral. The orb's light filtered through this tapestry, creating a mesmerizing pattern of light and shadow on the forest floor. Malgent struggled to adjust to the unfamiliar light that filtered through the canopy. The dense vegetation around him was unlike anything he had encountered in the depths below. It offered no phosphorescence, leaving him reliant on the pale, silvery gleam from above. There was a persistent hooting from a creature just above, as if it were trying to get his attention. Some kind of warning. The sound echoed through the space with eerie insistence. The ground beneath his feet was damp and yielding, a notable contrast to the solid stone he was used to. As his eyes slowly adjusted, the hooting finally ceased, leaving a sudden, heavy silence that seemed unnatural. He strained to listen, every sense on high alert. His hand brushed against something sticky. It was a sensation that sent a jolt of recognition through him. The faint clicking sound that followed was all too familiar, triggering a surge of adrenaline from within. Malgent's shadow vision allowed him to perceive the movement in the darkness. He caught sight of the source of the sound, a giant spider, its many legs clicking against the forest floor. These creatures, though of a different species, were reminiscent of the predators that lurked in the underworld. He had faced such threats before, but now, without the advantage of his magical scrolls, he relied solely on his skill with the blade. Drawing his long, dark blade, he assessed his surroundings. The spiders were many, their numbers multiplying with each passing second. 5, perhaps more, skittered around him, their intentions unmistakable. He knew the folly of a hasty escape. The webs could ensnare him in an instant. Steeling himself, he prepared to meet the first attacker head-on, determined to ensure that any creature bold enough to strike would pay dearly. Then, the creature above, the source of the hooting, caught his attention once more. It launched from its perch, gliding through the air with purpose. Malgent hesitated, torn between the urge to follow and the pressing threat before him. The spiders closed in, their legs whispering against the forest floor as they advanced. In a blur of motion, a huge spider lunged at him from the front, then another skirted to his left. Malgent's instincts took over, and with a swift, precise swing, he severed the legs of the flanking spider, sending it reeling. Then, spinning on his heel, he plunged his blade into the advancing spider, right in its center, the strike true and fatal. The spider curled, extinguished in an instant. Seizing the moment, Malgent made his retreat, slipping into the murk. But as he moved, the ground betrayed him, giving way beneath his feet. The world turned in a disorienting spiral, as though the ground itself conspired to drag him back into the depths from which he had emerged. Malgent's uncontrolled descent persisted until, with a sudden, jarring splash, he was enveloped by the icy embrace of a gully, or perhaps more accurately, a shallow ravine. The shock of the frigid water sliced through the chaos of his fall. Instinct took over. He steadied himself, his arms and legs moving to keep him afloat, a skill he had honed through navigating the deep, underground waterways of his home. As he regained his senses, Malgent felt his bag, still secured at his belt. Though the contents were now drenched, survival hinged on immediacy, not inventory. His long blade rested just beyond the water's edge, its faint glow visible only to him, a unique feature of the customized blades of Enrraw's wardens. This special trait allowed the owner to track their own blade, distinguishing it uniquely in the darkness. He waded cautiously towards the shore, his movements quiet and deliberate. Above him, the arachno beasts descended the hill, scanning the terrain for their prey. Malgent remained perfectly still, realizing that the spider's vision was not as acute as his own. Their aimless movements suggested confusion, or perhaps fear of something unseen. The eerie hooting echoed once more, a sound that eluded his search for its source. The spiders edged closer to the water, their caution evident. Malgent knew he needed his blade, the only defense he had. Inch by inch, he crept towards it, his eyes never leaving the arachnids. Finally, his fingers closed around the hilt just as the spiders detected his movement. They turned, their focus now locked onto him, advancing with renewed intent, with a need for stealth no longer necessary. Malgent hastened his movements. He raised his blade to face the swarm head-on. Outnumbered and cornered, he braced for the fight, determined. Just as the spiders closed in, a shadow passed overhead. An avian creature swooped down, releasing an object that landed amidst the arachnids. A fiery explosion erupted, engulfing the spiders in flames. The remaining arachnids, those outside the blast's reach, scurried away in terror. The force of the explosion knocked Malgent back into the water, the shockwave rippling through the gully.